can always look back, and UFOs were always very actively showing up where our nuclear weapons were, anything to do with nuclear weapons, nuclear tests, and things of that nature. Um, so I had, someone important posit a hypothetical to me that I took to be a very pointed, pointed conversation, on a very purposeful conversation, because of who the person was. And back in 1963, there was a nuclear test in space called Starfish Prime. Now, anyone can go out there and read about Starfish Prime, and you can go on Wikipedia and see all about it. And the idea of it was to really see what electromagnetic pulse would do in the vacuum of space, the EMP wave. Now, the EMP wave is what we hear about. If a nuke goes off, it'll shut off all of our electricity and burn all of our electrical, systems and whatever. So one of the fears we've always had as a country is, would the Soviets detonate a nuclear weapon in the atmosphere above America, and just that the EMP wave would come down and just wipe us back to the Stone Age, all of our computers, all of our phone lines, everything. So we definitely have had those fears, and so have other countries. So when Starfish Prime was one of the attempts to launch something into space and test how that EMP wave would travel. What's interesting about it is when you look it up and read about it, it actually did take out a satellite or two, is what it discusses. Well, I have very high reason to believe that maybe it did take out a satellite, but it really brought down something else as well. And then the question becomes, did we know that it might bring something else down? And or maybe a few of us knew, and the rest of the people on the team did not know. They just thought they were testing something in space. So I had some pretty deep, meaningful conversations about Starfish Prime, with the right people. And so what I wanted to do was, because there's something important about what it brought down. I mean, what it brought down led to a shift in thinking about what's here, and what we thought of the UFO phenomenon. So for me, I wanted to create a story that can house some of that information, and kind of look at it in a new way.
Now, I think at this stage, to be honest, Geoff, our audience's heads are spinning with the complexity of what we're talking about. So I want you to take me to the other bit of evidence that you've got that I just find fascinating. And this is the nuclear tests in the Pacific, where the Americans were testing a type of technology which essentially was designed to incapacitate ICBMs and possibly also satellites by using X-rays. Just explain to me what was going on, what this testing was all about, and talk me through what happened.
Well, McCone replaced Dulles, and obviously the management change was the same management as the old management. So Khrushchev said, "You're not playing the game. We know that you're fooling with our radar." And Jean Petit even mentions about the Cuban Missile Crisis in that classified report that he wrote. So they were fooling around with the radar system still. During the atmospheric test program known as Operation Dominic, there was a sub-program called Operation Fishbowl, which was nuclear weapons detonations in space or near space, where the effects of the nuclear weapons propagate differently from the atmosphere. And they discovered that high energy X-rays could actually take out incoming ICBM re-entry vehicles by a process called thermomechanical spallation, just from the high energy X-rays. But the design of the weapon was completely different to all the other EMP weapons that they developed. So it was an X-ray weapon, not a gamma ray weapon.
Now, the thing I find fascinating about this is it required the use of a large quantity of solid gold in the warhead of the weapon. Just explain that to me.
That's because gold in its outer valence shell only has one electron. So that's a process used in modern day X-ray machines called Bremsstrahlung radiation, where the electron is blasted out of the atom, and when it comes in vicinity of another nucleus of another atom, it actually orbits around the atom, but in doing so releases X-ray energy, because you can't destroy or create energy. But yeah, that's what they were testing, and they'd failed 3 times. So they'd blown up an enormous amount of gold from the US Treasury, because that particular was called the Bluegill test, which was a specific X-ray test. It had failed 3 times. Kennedy was not happy because the gold was from the US Treasury and it was vaporized. But
and
what?
Tell me what happened in the key event that we have videos of. So there are videos of what we're about to talk about. And when you're referring to those videos, can you actually specifically talk to the video so that our editors know what to include in this video?
Yep. So tensions are building up in Cuba. So there's a Atlas 8F missile test in the Cape Canaveral on the 19th of September 1962. It's a dummy test. There's no live warhead on it. They just want to see how accurate the re-entry vehicle is to the target. Once the re-entry vehicle has separated from the main Atlas missile, it starts its re-entry run. There's pyrotechnics and other things, they call them penetration aids, to fool radar. So if you try to shoot the warhead, you've got multiple targets to choose from. Once the penetration aids burn up, the RV is filmed by a high-flying KC-135 specialised aircraft run by EG&G of all people.
So the RV is a re-entry vehicle.
Yep, it's re-entering the atmosphere. It's travelling at Mach 18, which is 20,000 feet per second. And an object materializes right alongside it and paces this RV for a minute and a half. So
now, how do we know this? What's that source to? Is that an authentic document that sources that claim?
That was it's footage that Arrow has actually deemed a UFO incident, and they've put it in the National Archives. Anyone can see it. And I found
this is the bit I love. Sorry, Geoff, I've just got to savor this for a moment. So this is a real UFO sighting of some kind of anomalous object that appeared next to the testing of a re-entry vehicle off an ICBM, an American ICBM. And this is traveling at 18 times the speed of sound. And what does this object do around this re-entry vehicle warhead?
It's quite strange, because it seems to phase itself into existence and pulse, and then just travels alongside the re-entry vehicle for a minute and a half, and then slowly starts to phase itself out of existence.
So it's clearly intelligently controlled.
Well, yeah. The Americans are scratching their heads now, thinking, is this a Soviet payback for the Palladium? Are they doing something to us now? So NASA and the US Air Force are unsure. I found the post-flight test report of that missile test, and they said that the object's origin or identification could not be determined. So they don't know.
The crucial point is, and I just want to re-emphasize this, Arrow, the Pentagon's UFO investigation office, the official UFO investigation office for the Pentagon, the last thing Arrow ever wants to do is acknowledge that a UFO is real and potentially anomalous, potentially perhaps NHI. But in this case, they've acknowledged that this is a real UAP. They haven't been able to explain it prosaically, and they acknowledge officially in one of their reports that this Atlas RV UAP object is real.
That's right. They put that in the category in the National Archives, UFO category. So we couldn't do that today, Ross, with our technology, let alone in 1962, basically.
No, well, I mean, there's nothing. We have nothing that can fly at 18 times the speed of sound. And this is in the atmosphere too, isn't it? It's not in orbit.
It's just re-entering the atmosphere, yes.
Yeah.
So
now,
that's September 19... that is... That's in September 1962, in the lead up to the Cuban Missile Crisis. So 24th of October, Strategic Air Command have found the missiles getting moved to Cuba by Khrushchev, the intermediate range ballistic missiles, nuclear tipped. So Strategic Air Command goes to DEFCON 2. That's the only time in history that they've ever done that. So they're ready to go in for a preemptive nuclear strike to the Soviet Union. 17 selected targets, LeMay has called the Grand Tour. They're ready to go. So,
and just to make the point here, if anything validates President Kennedy's concern that whether they're spoofed or whether they're real, like they apparently were in the Atlas test, whatever they are, these UAPs are causing a ramping of the tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States. It's a vindication for JFK's concerns that if the Soviets and the Americans weren't open with each other about UAPs, this could lead to a tragic confrontation where one side fears that the other side is launching some kind of preemptive attack. That's the significance of that UFO that was seen at the Atlas test, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
But then, Geoff, take me forward to what then happens, because there is another test and another set of videos. What do you find? What have you uncovered?
So on the 25th of October, about 15 minutes to midnight, they launched Bluegill Triple Prime, which is a Thor intermediate range ballistic missile, single stage, launches this special, it's called the X1, which is the gold spherical secondary X-ray nuclear weapon. They launch it around, they want to detonate it around midnight to get the maximum effect, because at that point of time in the day, the ionosphere is at its highest point, because it's like a teardrop shape from the Earth in relation to the sun. So this weapon detonates at just a few minutes past midnight on the 26th of October, the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So there's another two KC-135 aircraft. Its whole tests are fully instrumented, because they've never actually fired one of these weapons before, because it's failed the previous 3 times. So there's two KC-135s operated by EG&G, because they developed a special high-speed Rapatronic camera that take the footage, because in the, I believe it's possibly still the same today, the only way to determine a nuclear weapon yield is to watch its expansion rate in the first few microseconds of the detonation. So these two aircraft have got these high-speed cameras watching the detonation. One has the call sign Kettle 1. The other one has the call sign Kettle 2. So during the blast, Kettle 1, you can see an object, and the fireball is approximately only a few milliseconds after the detonation. The fireball is approximately a kilometre wide. A bright, fiery object tumbles out from within the nuclear fireball, and it's plain as day. You can slow it down and see this very bright object. It must be at least 50 to 100 metres long, tumble out from within the nuclear fireball.
You believe that that is some kind of craft?
Just like the one that was following the Atlas 8F test, but this time it was a real warhead.
So this is speculation, of course, because we just simply don't know what was recovered. But you believe potentially there were non-human intelligences of some kind watching these American tests, keeping a very close observation on what was going on, and that because they were using this technology that was designed to knock out missiles with essentially an X-ray pulse, it also knocked out the UFO.
That's correct. The scientists put that detonation in a point in space and time that there was no other debris or aircraft or anything in the local area, because they wanted to see the weapons effects of this X-ray device. Now, what's interesting
Couldn't
is...
it be debris from the missile?
No, because the missile is hundreds of kilometres away by that point in time. It's launched 170 kilometre apogee. It's released the re-entry vehicle.